Hey, you're on halfway between zero. I tell the stories no one wants to believe, legends, whispers, moments rooted in truth that slip just out of reach. Stay with me. Keep your eyes open. You never know what's watching. Curiosity brought you here, but don't let it go. The reflection that wasn't mine. I started noticing it late at night, brushing my teeth, the corner of my reflection's mouth twitching before I moved. The first time I laughed it off, but the second time my reflection held my gaze longer than it should have. Every mirror in the apartment felt wrong. The edges flickered with movement that shouldn't exist, shadows leaning in when I wasn't looking. I avoided mirrors, but the reflection found ways to show itself. Glimpses in spoons, darkened windows, the tiny shimmer of a phone screen. It began making gestures I didn't make, subtle at first, a tilt of the head, fingers tapping where mine were still. I woke once to the faint sound of breathing behind me and froze, realizing it wasn't my own reflection that moved first. Even photographs became impossible. My own image looked slightly off, eyes too wide, posture too tense, like someone else was trapped in them. The bathroom mirror became a place of dread. Brushing my teeth felt like staring into a mouth that wanted to devour me. I tried covering mirrors with towels, but tiny gaps revealed it peering back, patient, smirking in ways I couldn't replicate. Friends asked why I flinched at every reflective surface, but I couldn't explain how something could follow me without moving. Every night, I dreamt it stepping out of the glass, whispering secrets about my own life that I hadn't told anyone. I woke to find faint fingerprints on mirrors I hadn't touched, smudges shaped like hands that weren't mine. Even my phone caught glimpses, a flicker behind me when I took selfies, a shadow that wasn't present in real life. I began sleepwalking, half aware, waking in front of mirrors I had avoided, feeling its gaze even when I shut my eyes. The reflection started anticipating me, tilting, blinking, smiling before I did, moving faster than my own body allowed. One morning, I woke to see it sitting at the edge of my bed, arms crossed, waiting for me to notice. I panicked, covering mirrors, breaking small glass surfaces, but cracks and puddles reflected it anyway, patient and exact. I caught myself watching the reflection when I thought I wasn't. The guilt twisted my stomach, knowing it thrived on my fear. I stopped leaving my apartment, but windows and shiny surfaces outside still showed its face, mocking, following, knowing I was trapped. I began leaving cryptic notes for myself, hoping to trick it, but the reflection would answer in subtle changes I couldn't ignore. The boundaries between dream and waking blurred. Sometimes I woke to its grin, inches from mine. Other times it mirrored me in impossible ways. I tried recording the mirrors, hoping evidence would help. But playback distorted its movements, showing things that never happened in reality. Friends noticed my paranoia escalating. Their words blurred in my mind, drowned out by the reflection that watched and waited in silence. I couldn't sleep. Every corner of the apartment seemed to hold it, stretching impossibly, leaning closer when I thought I was safe. One night I dreamt it climbed out of the mirror, voice low, telling me I had always been late, always behind, always its prisoner. I awoke cold, chest tight, and realized I had touched a mirror, yet I could see its face in every reflective surface. Even in public, windows and shiny floors showed it following me. Grinning faintly, a shadow tethered to my every movement. I began walking with my eyes down, avoiding every glance, but the reflection had patience I could never match. Months later, it hasn't stopped. Every reflective surface whispers its existence. Every mirror a reminder that it knows me better than I know myself. I've learned to move without looking, but sometimes I catch its grin out of the corner of my eye, and I freeze, knowing it is still there. Even when I convince myself I've escaped, the feeling lingers. My reflection smiles alone, patient, knowing, eternal, Tina. And now I leave lights on, doors cracked, but nothing stops the way it waits. Perfectly still, perfectly aware, ready for the moment I dare to glance. The apartment that moved. The first night I moved in, everything seemed normal. Boxes stacked neatly, the smell of fresh paint, the faint hum of the heater. By morning, the living room felt slightly longer, the corner of the sofa impossibly further from the wall than I remembered. I chalked it up to exhaustion, but when I measured the room, the numbers didn't match my memory, off by inches that shouldn't exist. The bedroom door didn't line up the same way with the hallway. I bumped my shoulder on the frame twice, thinking I was tired. In the kitchen, the counter seemed taller. The cabinets shifted slightly, subtle enough that I questioned if I was imagining it. Boxes I hadn't unpacked were moved, some open, some rearranged. Items I didn't place lying across the floor in impossible patterns. At night, I heard soft creaks, as if the apartment itself was stretching. The wood sighing under pressure I couldn't explain. The ceiling fan, once centered above the table, now hung slightly crooked, turning slowly, dragging shadows that seemed alive. I set a small note on the counter, then went to sleep, only to wake and find it repositioned, corners perfectly aligned with some unseen plan. Neighbors were friendly, curious about my moving in, but no one had seen anything unusual. No one could validate the subtle distortions. The shadows in the corners of the apartment seemed thicker at night, pooling unnaturally, almost intelligent. Asked if the rooms themselves were observing. I started leaving small markers, a chair, a vase, a notebook, each time waking to find them slightly shifted, subtly mocking my sense of control. One morning, I saw a faint footprint on the hardwood floor I hadn't left, leading into the kitchen and stopping exactly in front of the window. The hallway felt longer at night, the far wall receding slightly, and I caught myself walking faster, disoriented, unsure of where the corners really were. I began dreaming of the apartment stretching infinitely, rooms rearranging themselves while I slept, doors leading nowhere and then back into the bedroom. The mailman mentioned packages I never ordered, left on the counter, each with cryptic symbols I didn't recognize, handwriting I didn't know. My phone captured strange angles in photographs, doors that weren't there, corners sharper than reality allowed, shadows cast impossibly. I questioned my own mind, thinking I must be losing it, imagining things too subtle for anyone else to notice, too precise for coincidence. One night, the air felt thick, heavy, like the apartment was pressing in. Walls bending imperceptibly, floors tilting just enough to unbalance me. I woke to the sound of soft scraping, like furniture being moved slowly, deliberately. Though I was alone, lights off, doors locked, started taping measurements of walls, counters, doors, but each day the numbers contradicted the last, cooing slightly larger or smaller, impossible shifts. I caught glimpses of shapes at the corners of my eyes, not quite human, not quite shadows, always receding when I turned to face them. Even my bed felt different. The mattress leaned subtly, sheets not aligned the way I had left them, as if someone unseen had used them. I left the apartment for a few hours, returned to find the hallway seemingly stretched, doors in different positions, the layout subtly rearranged. The bathroom mirror reflected corners that didn't exist, angles of walls that contradicted themselves, reminding me how wrong everything had become. I placed tape along edges of the kitchen counter, only to wake and see it broken. Lines, crooked, some overlapping, the apartment mocking my attempt to map it. Tom, I began leaving small notes on doors. I see you, know you. A joke at first, but each morning I found them slightly moved, handwriting altered. The apartment began whispering in small ways, creaks timed with my footsteps, drafts that cooled specific corners, lights flickering as though to guide me. I realized I wasn't moving in the apartment. The apartment was moving around me, stretching, reshaping, designing spaces I could barely navigate. Even in daylight, the angles felt wrong, shadows too long, corners too sharp. And I started imagining footsteps I didn't hear, faint breathing I didn't feel. I tried leaving, packing boxes, moving furniture, but each morning I returned to subtle differences, almost imperceptible, yet growing, bending reality around me. And now I lie in bed, listening to the floors creak, feeling walls inch closer while I pretend to sleep, knowing the apartment waits, patient, aware, always rearranging. The phone that answers itself. It started with a single missed call at 3:17 a.m., my own number flashing across the screen. I hesitated, thinking it was a glitch, but when I answered, I heard my own voice whispering a secret I had never told anyone. The voice was too precise, too familiar, yet slightly off, like a memory warped by fear. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was a prank, but the calls multiplied, always in the dead hours when sleep left me fragile. At each time, the voice spoke of things I was thinking, places I had been, conversations no one else could know. Tried turning the phone off, removing the battery, but it powered itself on, calling again, the same whisper sliding into my skull. I began noticing subtle changes in the apartment, objects misplaced, lights flickering, doors ajar despite being locked. The whispers became instructions. Move this, do that, go there. I resisted at first, thinking it was my imagination. One night, I followed its directions out of curiosity, only to find small traces of my own life altered, things that hadn't existed before. It began predicting accidents, a spilled cup, a slipped step, a near miss with the stove. Each warning delivered in its distorted, intimate voice. Stopped trusting anyone, unsure if friends were real or just extensions of the phone's influence. Even my dreams carried the calls, the voice creeping in as if the line between sleep and wakefulness had disappeared. I caught glimpses of myself in the reflection of the phone screen, but not quite right. Movements delayed, eyes darker, grin wider. Messages appeared on their own, typed in my handwriting. I see you. You can't hide. You're next. I tried throwing the phone away, but each time I returned home, it sat on my nightstand, unlocked, whispering, patient, waiting. I covered it with a towel, unplugged chargers, and yet the battery glowed faintly, the screen flickering with a pulse I could feel in my chest. I began hearing the whispers when the phone was out of sight, low enough to make me doubt my sanity, precise enough to make me tremble. I stopped answering calls, but notifications still arrived. Missed calls from my own number, texts I hadn't written, images of places I hadn't been. The voice started giving me commands I couldn't ignore. Move, hide, touch, destroy, each followed by consequences I couldn't predict. One night, it told me something I could not understand, a phrase in my own voice, but layered, deeper, threatening to undo me if ignored. I began seeing shadows moving in synchronization with the phone's whispers, corners of the room darkening when it spoke. Even when I slept, my hand would lift, reaching toward the phone, compelled by a force I couldn't resist. I realized it wasn't just a phone, it was a presence, intimate, invasive, a parasite that knew every thought I tried to hide. Friends tried to contact me, but their calls were redirected, their voices distorted, as if the phone wanted to isolate me completely. I tried smashing it, crushing it under my foot, and the screen flickered one last time with a smile that was mine, but not mine. It never stopped. Each night, I wake to see the battery glow faintly on the table, the whispers crawling into my mind before my eyes open. Even now, writing this, my hand hesitates, knowing the phone could call itself at any moment, my own voice echoing secrets I have not yet lived. I have stopped leaving the apartment, stopped sleeping fully, stopped trusting the world because the phone waits. Patient, always watching, always knowing. I imagined throwing it into the ocean, burning it, smashing it, but I fear it would find me anyway, reaching through the digital pulse of reality itself. The calls have grown louder in my mind, even when I hear silence, even when I hide, even when I pretend to be anywhere else. I know the moment I glance at my phone, even briefly, it will be there, whispering truths I don't want to hear, bending my own existence. And I understand now that it isn't just a device. It is a part of me. It's a reflection I cannot escape, a presence that waits for the moment I let my guard down. The neighbor who lived behind the walls. I first heard it as a faint scratching in the wall, just past midnight. So soft I thought it was my imagination. It grew louder each night, deliberate, pacing under the floorboards. Something alive moving in a rhythm that mirrored my own heartbeat. I told myself it was just the old building settling, pipes contracting. The neighbors shifting furniture too late, but the sound felt targeted. The whispers began next, low, unintelligible, almost coaxing, as if someone were speaking just behind the wall, waiting for me to listen. I pressed my ear to the drywall, heart hammering, convinced I heard my own name spoken, drawn out slowly, deliberately, with amusement. Doors that had always closed quietly now slammed softly when I left a room, as if to mark my movements, track my presence. I started leaving lights on at night, hoping visibility would keep whatever it was from creeping closer. But the darkness persisted in corners I couldn't illuminate. Sometimes I woke to the faint sound of breathing directly behind my bed, shallow, measured, matching my own in rhythm and pause. Footsteps echoed along the hallway. At times I was certain no one could be moving. Small, patient, calculated, always behind me. I found scratch marks along the baseboards, thin, deliberate, some forming shapes that looked almost like letters, almost like a signature. I tried talking to neighbors, asking if anyone else had heard noises, but they all insisted the building was quiet, untouched by anything unusual. They began setting small traps, leaving objects in impossible positions, tumbling to catch whatever lurked unseen, only to find them subtly rearranged in the morning. One night, I heard the faintest whisper through the vent above the bedroom, my own voice repeating words I hadn't said out loud. The kitchen chair I had left upright was on the floor the next morning, placed perfectly where I always stood to make coffee. I stopped sleeping on my side of the bed, fearing that it might be watching too closely, shifting closer when I wasn't looking. Walls that had always been solid now felt porous, alive, as if something were breathing inside, learning, observing, calculating every move. I caught glimpses of movement through tiny cracks in the floorboards, shadows flickering just out of focus, human-shaped but wrong. The sounds began following me, echoing my steps from room to room, always one beat behind, as if imitating, mocking my rhythm. I left sticky notes with my own handwriting, recording times and movements, and found them subtly altered in ways I could not explain. Sometimes I woke to furniture slightly rotated, personal items moved, the apartment subtly rearranged, as though someone had been living a parallel life, in secret. I began whispering into the walls, trying to communicate, asking it to stop, to leave. But the reply came as creaks and scratches, in patterns I could barely understand. The whispers grew louder, forming words I recognized, sentences I could parse, each one more intimate, more invasive than the last. I started checking closets and crawl spaces, but they were always empty, clean, yet the presence remained, closer than ever, patient and silent. I began sleeping on the floor, feeling safer there, but the scraping followed, circling the apartment, pacing beneath, reminding me it was always moving, always watching. Even in daylight, the apartment felt wrong. Angles too sharp, shadows stretching, subtle changes I could not explain, the knowledge that I was never truly alone. I began recording at night, cameras in corners, but the playback showed only empty rooms, the movements and whispers erased, leaving only my fear intact. I stopped inviting friends over, fearing exposure, fearing it might retaliate, fearing what it had learned from observing me so intimately. I started leaving doors cracked, lights on, hoping it would be satisfied and leave. But the noises only grew more intricate, more precise, deliberate. I realized the presence had learned my routines, mirrored my actions, anticipated my thoughts. It now existed as a shadowy companion in every corner of my life. Even now, I hear it pacing softly behind the walls, sometimes laughing, sometimes whispering my own name. Patient, always patient, waiting for me to slip. I've learned to live with it, pretending to ignore the walls, the floorboards, the whispers. But I know it watches, follows, waits for the moment I falter. And I understand finally that I am no longer fully alone. Something lives in my apartment, in the walls, in the very spaces I thought were mine.